Marvel is full of all kinds of teams, both good and bad, extraordinary and subtle, popular and not so popular. Today, I think it's high time we shine a spotlight on our favorite teams of losers and rebels who should be treated better. Now, when we say that these teams deserve better, there really isn't a better example than the Harvesters. After the events of the superhuman Civil War, Iron Man created the 50-State Initiative. This was essentially an initiative to set up government-funded superhero teams throughout each of the United States. Some of these teams were already established groups of heroes, but for some states, completely new groups composed of local heroes were formed. The Sunflower State, Kansas, gained its team in the form of the Harvesters. This new team was made up of pretty strange heroes that we hadn't seen before. Topeka, who led the team, was basically just a super soldier. Then there was Pioneer, who had the power of the plains, as she put it. Sunflower, who was literally a human sunflower who got stronger under direct sunlight and appeared to have a high degree of durability. There was Meadowlark, who could fly and sing to hypnotize people. And then, of course, there was Grainbelt, whose body was literally made of grain that he could control. Why did they deserve better? Well, this team's only claim to fame came when they faced off against a zombie clone of the hero Hyperion, who is basically the Marvel equivalent of Superman, and he utterly destroyed each member of this team. They did not stand a single chance. Only Pioneer just barely made it out alive by raising up an entire herd of undead cattle and trampling the zombie Hyperion, who then succumbed to mad cow disease, and I wish I made that up. Now, most of you nerds have heard about the Skrulls. This alien race has been a nuisance in Marvel Comics ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four #2. The Skrull members who fought the Four at this time ended up hypnotized into believing they were actually cows by Reed Richards, and they shapeshifted into and were stuck as cows. What I'm sure Reed did not anticipate is that these Skrull cows ended up finding themselves in a butcher and turned into beef. This Skrull beef was then consumed by regular old Earthlings. Now, while a good majority of people did not survive the Skrull cow meat, a select few did, and had the Skrull's adaptable DNA code transferred into their human cells, resulting in a condition called Skrullivoria-induced Skrullophobia. The infected individuals gained the ability to shapeshift like a Skrull, but also developed an intense irrational fear and hatred of the Skrull, and they came together to form the aptly named Skrull Kill Crew. Fueled by their irrational impulses to destroy the Skrull, they helped prevent the Skrulls from attacking other people, but they even faced off against other villains like Baron von Strucker. It's just a really unfortunate way to gain a superpower. Now, X-Force is the awesome Black Ops X-Men related team with characters like Domino and Cable and Cannonball and Wolverine and Warpath, and it's awesome. But for a short little while, it was decidedly not awesome. In the year 2000, X-Force got cancelled and rebranded into what eventually would become X-Statix. This team isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The original team was made up of the mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit with Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who was basically a squid man. But all of those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of Ecstatics who have passed away over their history, with only 9 surviving. 9. Okay, so we have Ecstatics, we have X-Force, we have the X-Men of course, and we have a whole handful of other X-branded teams, but some mutants aren't considered presentable to the outside world because whatever their mutation is, it has been deemed either gross or terrifying by the wider Marvel human society, or they are mutants who are just bitter about being persecuted for being mutants. This group banded together, named themselves the Morlocks, and headed down into the Morlock tunnels beneath New York City. Already, without anything happening to them other than their mutations, these characters have it rough and deserve better. But then, to add flame to the fire, the Morlocks undergo tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with one of the worst being the event known as the Mutant Massacre, Reaper, where Mr. Sinister and the Mutant Gambit put together a group of villainous characters and led them into the tunnels to commit, well, a massacre. And it was all because another villain, Dark Beast, created some of these Morlocks, and Mr. Sinister didn't like that. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Putting their heads together, figuratively, not literally, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. The quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla; Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape; Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, who accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically just had really baggy skin; and Chandu the Mystic's head had been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite the versatile little guy. Not gonna lie. The Champions of Los Angeles were the first West Coast-based superhuman team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against a great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of two former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength, Hercules, who I swear is super underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who led the team. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the group, and with his money they bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the entire idea of the team as a whole. Both Iceman and Angel called it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in a scientific aspect, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow but ended up changing sides instead. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda love the lineup of this team. I'd read it if they came back. Now, you remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throws, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff. The leader, Ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that honestly works really well together, juggling their various different throwing instruments between each other. They worked so well together, in fact, that they were even hired to and succeeded in breaking the villain Crossfire out of prison. However, once they had taken Crossfire to their HQ, they discovered that Crossfire was broke. His assets had all been impounded, and he had lost all of his useful connections. These guys did battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki, of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the Big Top Casino in Las Vegas. Their Marvel wiki even lists their origins as, and I quote, a joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly can't even believe this group of villains exists and that they haven't been able to get Bullseye into their ranks. What the heck's up with that? Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think that Horticulture may be my favorite. For starters, they look so cool, but then you find out that it's actually just a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it, and it was ruled by plant life. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their ages and interests in plants. We got Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh! What a bunch of winners. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. They did get pretty handily walloped though, so Second to last, as part of kid-centric Star Comics, Marvel decided to release a team composed of of animal superheroes, which is cool. But the difference here is this team of animal heroes were cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with absolutely massive arsenals and awesome exoskeletons, which is much cooler. And they fought for the environment, which is even cooler. This team was made up of Boomer, a kangaroo, Lionheart, a lion, Soar/Slipstream, an eagle, Reckless, who was a bear, and Dr. Echo/Surfstreak, who was a dolphin. Does it sound kind of ridiculous? Sure, but it is awesome. This team was co-created by Multicore, spearheaded by Dr. Randall Pierce, and it was all part of Weapons 2, which itself was the second project after Weapon 1. Who would have thought? Also known as Project Rebirth, also known as the project that created Captain America. Now some of you may know that these projects were part of a bigger thing called Weapons Plus, who would eventually go on to create Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Nuke, Typhoid Mary, Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, and of course, Wolverine. So most people know that they aren't exactly a good group of people. While their original series was cancelled after only a few issues in Wolverine and Captain America Weapons Plus #1, those two heroes investigated an abandoned Weapons Plus site where they found the team kept in hibernation tanks full of liquid. The bear, Reckless, was freed from his container but attacked the duo, resulting in his passing. And last up today, first ever introduced in 1989's West Coast Avengers Volume 2 number 46, the Great Lake Avengers formed after Mr. Immortal put out an ad in the local personals seeking men and women of action to join forces and form a team of super friends. This managed to catch the attention of Avengers members Hawkeye and Mockingbird. In order to help them out, the Great Lakes Avengers were trained by the duo and the rest was history. The team is made up of pretty much Z-list heroes, with the main lineup usually consisting of Mr. Immortal, Doorman, Big Bertha, and Flatman. Naturally, as a sort of running joke throughout Marvel Comics since their introduction, the team goes up against some of the zaniest villains and situations I have ever seen, and they don't do particularly well. But I'll be darned if I don't have a soft spot for this team. The funny thing about most joke characters and teams is that they almost always end up actually doing some pretty extraordinary things from time to time. I can't think of any examples for the Great Lake Avengers, but I'm sure you guys can, and you can tell me about it in the comments below.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This might be a controversial way to start off this list, but I truly do believe that Alpha Flight can be more powerful than the Avengers team, especially if we're talking about consistent teamwork, which the Avengers members sometimes struggle with due to, well, butting heads with each other. I mean, people on the Avengers have straight up killed their other teammates before. That is just a fact. I mean, I did a whole list about the amount of times Iron Man has been basically killed by his teammates, and after talking it over with Andrew, it seems like Alpha Flight also has a better system in place for making sure their team not only works smoothly, but also that members are well trained before even earning their place on the team, due to the existence of both Beta Flight and Gamma Flight, which were initially used as training teams. Although Gamma Flight has kind of become something else in recent years, but yes. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving this video a little like? Click that thumbs up. Number 9, Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is basically Marvel's main magical team. At least currently, that's who we got. Midnight Suns typically deal with threats that are more mystical or supernatural in nature. They were brought together initially by Doctor Strange to fight against Lilith and her small army of demonic offspring known as the Lilin, which, I mean, of course this team would be brought together by Doctor Strange, right? Each member of the original team roster had interacted with the Lilin before, which was what tied them all together. Team members and leaders have included Doctor Strange, Wong, Blade, Morbius, Magic, Nico Minoru, Wolverine, Zoe Laveau, Kushala, Dr. Voodoo, Elsa Bloodstone, multiple Ghost Riders, Hannibal King, Hellstrom, Iron Fist, Man-Thing, Jennifer Kale, Ben Reilly, Victoria Montesi, and Werewolf by Night. It's a lot of supernatural and mystical people. Number 8, Web Warriors. The Web Warriors are a fantastic multiversal team that spun out of the events of Spider-Verse. But even before they existed in the comics, they and the Spider-Verse were inspired by the team-ups of multiversal Spider-Man in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. The Web Warriors were brought together by the multiversal threat of the Inheritors, who hunted down various alternate spider people, known as spider totems, across the Marvel multiverse. After they were defeated during the Spider-Verse event and the dust had settled, the Web Warriors were created to defend those worlds, who were left afterwards without a hero. Considering how powerful Peter Parker's Spider-Man is, I think you can understand how a team made up of various alternate versions of the character would be off the charts when it comes to their power level. I mean, Spider-Man himself is pretty crazy, like a team of Spider-Men. I wish we had an Avengers team that was actually just like different Spider people. That could be pretty cool. Number 7. Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, despite being often smaller in number, though they have expanded beyond that number over the years, is still mightier, I'd say, than the Avengers. But I also feel like that's to be expected. After all, the FF were one of the first Marvel teams and are referred to fondly as Marvel's first family. So if anything, I consider them kind of like the first team. The Fantastic Four usually is made up of the 4 initial friends and relatives who are forever changed by exposure to cosmic rays during their first voyage out into space. At least that's the original origin story. The team has had countless heroes join their ranks here and there over the years. Well, you know Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and the Thing. Some other members on the FF roster have included the Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Storm, She-Hulk, Nova, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, Crystal, and Black Panther, among others. Number 6. The Quiet Council. They aren't really a team of superheroes, but the title of this video is simply Marvel Teams More Powerful Than the Avengers, and the Quiet Council, I would consider them to be a team still. They're a team of folks in the Marvel Universe. Granted, their team is more about protecting their power and their nation of Krakoa, but hey, I think it still counts. The Krakoan Quiet Council as such is composed of not just mutant superheroes, but mutant villains as well, as Krakoa is said to be a place for all mutants, where past misdeeds are forgiven in the name of creating a better tomorrow and a safe haven for all mutants. Current members include some of the most prominent, iconic, and powerful mutants in all of existence: Destiny, Hope Summers, Storm, Exodus, Professor X, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister, Captain Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw. Formerly, the council also featured such additional powerhouses as Apocalypse, Magneto, and Jean Grey, besides. Number 5. X-Men. I mean, of course I was going to put the X-Men on this list. Y'all know me, I'm a huge mutant fan. And the premier mutant team in the comics, of course, is the X-Men. I've also loved that over the years the X-Men has become more of a global team than just necessarily an American one. Unlike the Avengers, which has tended to remain mostly American in terms of their prominent team members throughout the years. I mean, most of the people on the Avengers tend to be American, not always, but I feel like the X-Men is a little bit more global in that regard. Although they do also have a lot of American members. I mean, based in New York. It's Marvel Comics. X-Men's current and previous lineup have also been exceptionally strong, and even the OG X-Men roster featured some mutants who are still considered the most powerful even today, and who are still around, of course, in the comics even today. The current roster features Cyclops, Firestar, Forge, Iceman, Havoc, Magic, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, and Synch. Honestly, Synch is also alone just so amazing and has taken the meaning of teamwork to another level, I think. Synch. Such an underrated character that now is getting his time in the spotlight. Number 4. Eternals. The Eternals are another team that deserve more love when it comes to the comics and when it comes to their powers. They're a team made up of literal immortal beings who are extremely resistant to dying, but up until recently anyways, even if they did die, they would actually quickly return to life thanks to the machine which rebuilds and resurrects them and is integrated, or was integrated, with the planet Earth, which is actually itself a living mechanism of sorts. The Eternals recently had a killer comic series written by Kieran Gillen that I would also highly recommend you check out. This is a series that will make you a fan if you weren't already. The Eternals all also possess a unique power comparable to a powerful ability of mutant villain Apocalypse. They can manipulate and alter their own molecular structure, having complete control of it. And some, like Circe, can even manipulate matter in general, be it organic or inorganic. Number 3. God Squad. The God Squad was brought together to combat another group of gods, the Skrull Pantheon. The team made their first appearance in Incredible Hercules issue 117, but while Hercules would become their leader, they were actually brought together by Athena's command. Although she didn't serve on the team, a bunch of other super powerful individuals and gods did. With Hercules leading, their roster over time also included Thor, Circe, the Silver Surfer, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Mick Boshi, Atom, Galactus, and Venus. The God Squad only made a few appearances, but I still think they're a super cool team, and I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see them in Thor: Love and Thunder. I was kind of hoping God Squad, but alas. Number 2, the Annihilators. The Annihilators are an insane cosmic team, and you know how I feel about the cosmic world of Marvel. It's probably one of the most powerful areas. The Annihilators first appeared in Thanos Imperative Devastation issue number 1, and were created by Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Miguel Sepulveda, during a time when the Guardians were getting a refresh by Abnett and Lanning in the comics. The team was actually inspired by Star-Lord himself, who had an idea for a truly badass team of galactic guardians, which Cosmo put into action. The team has featured Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Gladiator, Icon, Quasar, and Ronan the Accuser. At one point they used their powers to combine 2 suns together and prevented them from going supernova. So yeah, that's the power level that we're talking about. Number 1, the Defenders. I feel like the Defenders is a team that is often forgotten, but is randomly like one of the best superhero teams we've ever seen from Marvel. Perhaps this also has to do with the fact that none of its members ever really wanted to join or be there, at least not initially. The Defenders was the name given initially to the reluctant team up of the Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange, with Strange acting as the de facto leader of the team. Also, just having Doctor Strange as the leader of any team makes it pretty impressive, hence why the Midnight Suns are also on here. When it comes to Avengers teams, he tends to be more elusive, and even solo, he's known for being a powerhouse, so combine him with other powerhouses on a team, albeit ones, you know, in different categories like the Hulk and Namor, and you can see how this team becomes seemingly unstoppable. In fact, I feel like the fact that each of these heroes, you know, kind of has their own thing going on is what makes the Defenders so great. And they've also had a lot of other people join them throughout the years that have also been insane. As long as they all happen to be working together, the Defenders is a pretty great team, which of course, especially in the beginning, wasn't always the case. But hey, they figured it out.
In the number 10 spot, we have Crime Syndicate of America. These guys debuted in Justice League of America number 29 and were an alternate version of the Justice League that existed in the reverse universe of Earth 3. Members included evil incarnations of the Justice League, such as Ultraman instead of Superman and Owlman instead of Batman. They were so powerful and malicious that they were able to overthrow police forces and basically controlled the world, and they were totally bored with that. Coming in at number 9 is Dark Avengers. Because we have an evil Justice League, we gotta have an evil Avengers. The Dark Avengers first appeared in their own self-titled series and were a team assembled by Norman Osborn. You just know if Green Goblin's involved, it's not a good sign. After being put in charge of the Superhuman Defense Initiative, he figured he'd better recruit a new Avengers team that consisted of villains such as Daken, Ares, and Bullseye. Don't sound like no Avengers team to me. They even masqueraded as heroes for a while, but that sure did not last long. Next at number 8 we got Hydra. Hydra is more so a terrorist organization than a supervillain team, but I think we can all agree their menacing and long-standing role as one of Marvel's meanest teams earns them a spot here. Originating in Strange Tales number 135, Hydra was headed by Arnold Brown, who was then killed off and left leadership to Baron Strucker and Red Skull, hence becoming a giant foe to Captain America. Just like their mythical name implies, no matter how many times they're cut down, they just seem to keep popping back up. In the number 7 spot is Hellfire Club. They're not just bad guys, they're bad guys with money. The Hellfire Club is literally that, an elite club. First appearing in Uncanny X-Men number 129, the Hellfire Club is stocked with rich and influential members such as Selene, Emma Frost, and Sebastian Shaw. An inner circle is composed of the highest ranking members who use their place in society to pursue their own agendas, such as defeating the X-Men and starting up wars. Rich people these days. Coming in at number 6 is the Skrulls. The Skrulls have been around for a really long time, mostly because they are totally fun and creepy villains. First shown in Fantastic Four number 2, they have gone on to wreak havoc across Marvel Comics with their war against the Kree. They are a green, fierce alien race with the ability to shapeshift, and they've set their sights on Earth multiple times as a place to be conquered. My advice, keep your windows closed at night. Next up at number 5 we have Masters of Evil. Another team that's been around for a long time and undergone many changes. The Masters of Evil first appeared in the Avengers number 6. They were originally a team of villains gathered by Nazi Baron Heinrich Zemo to face off against the revived Captain America. That guy's apparently off a lot of people. The Masters of Evil went on through many changes in roster, which was awesome because it showcased a lot of lesser known villains. You get bored reading about Magneto over and over again. Up next in number 4 is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. What's more fun than mutants? Evil mutants. The Brotherhood first debuted in X-Men number 4 headed by Magneto. They weren't just a team of villains who wanted to cause destruction and chaos, They were a team of villains banded together by common belief that mutants were superior to humans. Original team members included Toad, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Mastermind. Though the team and its ideals have shifted over the year, they remained one of the most prominent X-Men villain teams for years after. In the number 3 spot, we've got Sinister Six. These guys are probably the most comprehensive team of poor Spider-Man's villains. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 1, the original team is composed of big names such as Dr. Octopus, Vulture, Sandman, and Kraven the Hunter, to name a few. Villains all vying to get their hands or tentacles or claws around Spidey's throat. What makes this team great is that most of the members are easily recognizable, even to the casual Spider-Man fan, making them memorable and fearsome. Whether it's in the form of the Sinister Four, or the Sinister Seven, or the Sinister 12, or the Sinister 682. Coming in at number 2 is Black Lantern Corps. These guys first appeared as a team in Green Lantern Volume 4 number 25, and they've got one of the most unique concepts for a supervillain team, scoring themselves high on the list. The team is made up of deceased characters who are recruited to make up an army to support Necron, the Lord of the Unliving. The most freaky thing about them is when they're under the Black Ring's control, they crave the hearts of those who are most emotionally affected by their resurrection. So when Great Grandpa rises from the dead, you'd best turn the other way. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we have the Suicide Squad. No matter the incarnation, the idea behind the most popular villain team around is the reason they've snagged the number 1 spot. Villains being forced into the roles of heroes on dangerous missions they'll probably never return from. What's not to love? The first version appeared in The Brave and Bold number 25 without the villain concept, and then underwent a revamp to bring us all the team that we love. Now if they could bring us a movie that we love, that would be great too.
Number 10, Alpha Flight. This is for sure the least obscure entry on the list, as I choose to talk about them constantly, and Alpha Flight has been somewhat reinvented in the last few years and changed into an international space force being led by Captain Marvel, but we are talking about the original team. First appearing in X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight was Canada's answer to the Avengers, with members with unique abilities from all over Canada. Unlike most super teams who are always working together, Alpha Flight operated in more of a Mission Impossible James Bond kind of style, by choosing heroes from their roster and assigning each of them to specific missions that they would handle as individuals and pairs, only coming together as a full team in the case of extreme threats. Despite multiple tries by Marvel to give the team their own ongoing series, Alpha Flight has never quite caught on in the States. Perhaps they are just too specifically Canadian for a readership who tends to prefer American-centric stories, or maybe they just haven't been given the right push into the mainstream. Either way, Alpha Flight remains a team that not a huge amount of readers have heard of, and even fewer have actually read. Although, they did appear in one episode of the classic X-Men cartoon. Small victories. Number 9, ForceWorks. When it was determined that the Avengers' ever-expanding roster should be better divided up across the United States, rather than everyone working out of New York, the West Coast Avengers were formed. This experiment didn't end up working out, and the team was soon disbanded. In a typically Tony Stark move, Tony Stark decided that he should instead fund and create his own superhero team to help protect the West Coast. The resulting team was ForceWorks. The original team consisted of Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Man, and US Agent, with Scarlet Witch being chosen as the team leader. The team operated for a while, taking on threats like the Mandarin and Kang the Conqueror, but the team was plagued with internal issues. Despite Scarlet Witch being the team leader, Iron Man was constantly undermining her authority and forcing the team to carry out his personal vendettas. This attitude culminated in him forcing the team to brutally kidnap Hawkeye, which got him booted from the team. ForceWorks carried on without him for a while, but eventually decided to disband, although they were briefly brought back under the leadership of Maria Hill in order to fight the Robot Revolution. ForceWorks is an obscure offshoot of the already relatively obscure West Coast Avengers, however they did serve as the supporting cast for Iron Man's 90s animated series. Number 8, the Outlaws. Not to be confused with the team from DC Comics, Marvel's Outlaws are a group of heroes, all with a criminal past, who are led by Spider-Man and Silver Sable. The group formed when photographic evidence came out implicating Spider-Man in a robbery. Wanting to prove the innocence of the man who had helped them reform, Prowler, Rocket Racer, Will-O-the-Wisp, Paladin, and Sandman all began searching for evidence that would prove the webbed wall crawler's innocence. They discovered that Spidey was actually working for Silver Sable, and that what he had stolen was actually incriminating evidence against a member of the Maggia crime family. Impressed with the group's skills, Silver Sable brought them on as freelancers, and the team would occasionally come together, usually whenever Spider-Man was being framed or something and needed support from outside of the Avengers. Although some of the various members of the team are relatively well-known characters, their team isn't well known, as they come together so rarely and haven't teamed up since 1991. Number 7, Cyforce. When a telepathic CIA agent named Emmett Proudhawk had a vision about 5 young people with psychic abilities being protected by a hawk. He decided to track down the people in his vision and bring them together to become Psi-Force. He got most of them together but was killed by a Russian operative. The 5 psychic youths discovered that when they all touched Proudhawk's mystic medallion, it summoned a creature called the Psi-Hawk who would help them defeat their enemies. You know, like Captain Planet. The youths worked together to defeat an evil Russian paranormal named Rostov, and they were chased by members of the CIA, the KGB, and a shadowy organization called the Medusa Web, who eventually brought the kids on as freelance agents. Although they had their own 32-issue series, the fact that this Marvel team has no recognizable superheroes and is based in Earth 148,611 rather than the mainstream Earth 616 universe keeps them pretty obscure. Number 6. Force of July. The first DC entry on this list, Force of July were an Americana-themed group who often found themselves at odds with the Outsiders. The Force answered to the American Security Agency and were tasked with eliminating anyone whose activities were deemed to be subversive to America's interests by any means necessary. Some of the team's members include Lady Liberty, Silent Majority, Sparkler, Mayflower, and their leader, Major Victory. Although they aren't technically villains, their fanatic patriotism prevented them from seeing that they were being manipulated by their handler, who was using them to help his scheme to create a satellite called Project Orwell that would have been used to spy on people using their televisions. This plot was stopped by the Outsiders, and the Force of July later found themselves fighting against the Suicide Squad, who killed Sparkler and Mayflower. The remaining members ended up joining the squad but did not last long on the team's roster. Number 5. The Inferior Five. Coming from Earth 12 in the DC multiverse, this team are the Nepo babies of a team of heroes called the Freedom Brigade. When the Freedom Brigade retired, the heroes encouraged their children to follow in their footsteps, and they started a team dedicated to protecting the people of Megaopolis. Known as the Fearsome Five, the members of this team, Awkward Man, Blimp, Dumb Bunny, and White Feather, have somewhat useless and conflicting powers, and although they usually manage to save the day, it is usually a result of dumb luck rather than skill. Their lameness led to the people of Megalopolis calling their champions the Inferior Five, which the team eventually decided to adopt as their official name. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, their world was destroyed, and as a result they were sent to comic book limbo, which is a realm similar to the Island of Misfit Toys, where characters who are written out of continuity remain until they're brought back into continuity. Number 4. The League of Losers. In the Marvel universe of Earth 6215, a time-traveling villain from the future named Kronoke used his knowledge of the past to travel back in time to the present with an army and kill all of Earth's mightiest heroes. Fortunately, the records he was working off of did not include any reference to these C-list Marvel characters because none of them had ever done anything that was worthy of note. Darkhawk, Speedball, Dagger, Terror, X-23, Gravity, and Sleepwalker were thus able to take on Kronoke and travel back to before the villain had stolen his time travel tech and stop him. Although this stranded the team in the future, it also created a divergent timeline known as Earth 2992, where the villain's scheme was never an issue. Wow, time travel can be such a pain to explain. Number 3. Section 8. One of the strangest teams in the DC universe, Section 8 is a group of what I will very generously call heroes who operate out of Gotham City. Each member of the team is more bizarre than the last, so buckle up. Shakes is a schizophrenic with a speech impediment. Jean de Baton is a stereotypical Frenchman who hits people with a baton. Defenestrator is a massive former Arkham inmate who carries around a window to smash over his enemies' heads. Flemgem spits massive amounts of snot at his enemies in order to blind them. Bueno Excelente is just some guy who sneaks up on his enemies and then essays them. Dog Welder is a crazy person who welds dogs to people's faces, and Friendly Fire is a hero who can shoot energy beams but is incapable of hitting anything he aims at, usually hitting his teammates instead. They are led by Sixpack, an alcoholic who pees himself and then attacks people with a beer bottle. Shockingly, this team has not gotten a big budget movie, and all of them were killed after an encounter with the mini-angled ones, with the exception of Sixpack, who suddenly manifested reality-warping powers to defeat the villains and save the world. Number 2. The Neo Knights. After having great success publishing comic books based on Hasbro's line of G.I. Joe toys, the two companies collaborated again to create the series that would give much-needed backstory for Hasbro's new line of toys, the Transformers. A lot of the Transformers mythology came from these comics, but due to the rights of certain characters remaining with the comic book company, not all of the elements were brought over for the television series or subsequent films. One of these elements is the superhero team, the Neo Knights. When the Autobots returned to space, leaving no one to protect their longtime ally, GB Blackrock, he decided to bring together a team of superpowered humans in order to fight any Decepticons that caused trouble on Earth. The members are Circuit Breaker, a woman who was paralyzed in an encounter with the Transformers and has developed a special suit that allows her to walk as well as fly and shoot repulsor beams. Also on the team are Thunder Punch, a man who can enlarge his feet and hands and punch with heightened strength, Rapture, a woman who can cause any sentient being to shut down and enter an elaborate fantasy, and Dynamo, who could channel the planet's latent energies. They are extremely obscure, only showing up in the original US and UK Transformers comics, and due to Hasbro having the rights for most of the Transformers and Marvel owning the rights to this team, they are likely to remain so for quite some time. Number 1. The Forgotten Heroes. They may have more appearances than some of the other teams on this list, and some of their members are relatively well known, but with a name like the Forgotten Heroes, how could they not end up on the top spot for this list? The team consists of a bunch of DC heroes who all stumbled upon ancient golden pyramids. When the heroes tried to report what they had found, the US government disavowed them and ruined each of their reputations to discredit them. Immortal Man brought all the heroes together and filled them in that the pyramids were part of a scheme by Vandal Savage to kill Superman. They formed a team together and teamed up with the Man of Steel to stop Vandal's plot. The team lives up to its name with members like Atomic Knight, Ballistic Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Dolphin, The Ray, Vigilante and Resurrection Man, as well as a few slightly more well-known heroes such as Rip Hunter, Animal Man, and Rick Flag.
Number 10. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand has only made a few appearances in the comics, so they're not as much of a superhero team as they are, I guess, a collective of witches, but I feel like most of the witches are good among them, or at least neutral, so I figured it would be safe to count them. Also, I believe in general as a group they're a force of good, so even those that are part of the group that aren't as good, the whole group is supposed to be good, okay? Prominent but still somewhat obscure members include Tracy 13, Enchantress, Manitou Dawn, and Witchfire. I love Witchfire. When will I get my Witchfire series? And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any good old nerdy content? I know there's a lot of people out there that don't subscribe, so if that's you, I'm talking to you. Number 9. Justice League Dark. Everyone's heard of the Justice League, but who the heck is Justice League Dark? And why do they sound like they're a supervillain team? Well, while their name might make them sound like they are up to no good, the opposite could not actually be more true. They are a more covert division of the Justice League, actually, an offshoot that primarily works in the shadows to help stop more unseen magic threats. In fact, when they saved the universe from Hecate's influence, the Justice League wasn't even aware of what was going on at the time, because Hecate just didn't want the Justice League to be aware of her, so they simply just weren't. And that was a threat to the entire universe, friends. They deal with threats that the Justice League honestly might be ill-equipped to face, and one of their members is actually a core member of the JLA team, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman initially acts as a team leader, and the team has included Zatanna, John Constantine, Detective Chimp, Dr. Fates, both Khalid Nazur, and also for a little while Kent Nelson, Madame Xanadu, Animal Man, Dead Man, Ragman, all the men, really, Etrigan and Jason Blood, and a slew of others who are more magically inclined. It's a big list, but that's some of them. Number 8. Exiles. The Exiles are probably the most potentially well-known of the ones that I've listed here, but if you are new to comics or more of a casual fan, this one for you will probably be something that you don't know about, which is why I put it here, because I want you to know. For those who don't know the Exiles, they're a super cool team with a long ongoing series. They're actually a multiversal superhero team made up of various alternate versions of superheroes from across the multiverse. Because anyone from any other Earth can be a member of the team, there are a lot of people who have been on the roster over the years, members who have come and gone or even died during their time on the team. The very first team to appear though in Exiles, the first roster that appeared in Exiles Volume 1, Issue Number 1 out of 2001, a lot of ones, featured a slew of alternate reality versions of characters, including an alternate version of Blink from Age of Apocalypse reality Earth number 295, Nocturne, the daughter of Scarlet Witch and Nightcrawler in an alternate reality, Thunderbird of Earth 1100, Mimic of Earth 12, an alternate version of everyone's favorite fun-loving mutant Morph from Earth 1081, and an alternate version of Magneto simply known as Magnus from Earth 27. So many cool multiverse folks. Number 7. Blue Lanterns. You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity. And even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people know Green Lanterns, whose color represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. To be a Blue Lantern, though, you must be full of hope, strong in hope. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are kind of like, I guess, the therapists or the peacekeepers, or maybe the priests. That's accurate based on their naming. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they are nearby. This is because their whole focus is on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with titles like Saint, Sister, or Brother. Number 6. Hellions. While they were recent, the fact remains that the Hellions were a pretty short-lived team. Now, if you're new to the channel, first of all, hello, welcome in, happy to have you. As I said, click the subscribe. And also, you probably aren't familiar with the Hellions. Those who have been here for a while, regardless of whether they read the book or not, will know the team I'm talking about though, because I do like to talk about them. Sure, there might be many out there who know of Emma Frost's Hellions team in their striking pink suits, but how many know about Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister's Hellions team? Sounds like it should be a villain team again, right? Well, oddly enough, it isn't. This team was made up of the rejected members of Krakoan Mutant Society, who were put together on their own team with the hope of rehabilitating the mutants and helping them to find a place in society, while also allowing more put together mutants to keep a kind of a closer eye on them, I guess. Minus Mr. Sinister, who they did put in charge of this team for some reason. Goodness. This was also at a time where pretty much all mutants were kind of considered to be like good. However, I still feel like letting Sinister run this team was a huge oversight. That is part of the reason that I wanted to read the series though, and I was honestly not disappointed with this series. The team includes Quanon as Psylocke, Havoc, Wildchild, Nanny, Orphan Maker, John Greatcrow, and former Hellion Empath. The team only lasted as long as their series, and afterward they disbanded, and it was really sad. Number 5. Capes Inc. Capes Inc. is another superhero team from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well, although I believe it only lasted like a few issues, 3 I think to be exact. The series centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate like a superpowered police station or office. It's like Bolt has this partner and they drive around and like fight crime. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who ends up joining with Bolt. Bolt, we learned, originally actually wanted to be known as Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe hero. Oh man, there's just so many little bits in this that are pretty hilarious. Number 4. A-Force. A-Force is a team that I love, but not one that many people talk about, I find. I feel like a lot of people forget that this happened. It's probably because, we haven't seen A-Force in some time. But when they were around, they were pretty great, but also quite short-lived. Even more so than the Hellions. A-Force at least appeared in a few other comics other than their own series, but they had a considerably shorter run for their own series, despite their team honestly being really stacked and it sounding like, I don't know, just sounded like a really great team. I'm surprised it didn't go longer. Members included She-Hulk, who led the team, Captain Marvel, Dazzler, an alternate reality version of Dazzler who is Thor, Nico Minoru, Singularity, and Queen Medusa. Number 3. God Squad. God Squad was one that I was hoping to see a nod to in Thor Love and Thunder. I was hoping that when we went to Olympus, we might get a peek at some version of this team. Maybe not one for one, but it could have been cool to see the team acknowledged with maybe even a different take on it. I just really love the name, God Squad. This was a group of heroes and gods who were assembled to fight against the Skrull Pantheon, brought together by Athena. The team included Hercules as leader, Circe and Ajax of the Eternals, Thor, Silver Surfer, Galactus, Venus, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, what would that hero be? Just someone that snowboards, I guess. Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Amatsu Mikaboshi, and Adam. Number 2. Justice League Queer. Justice League Queer has made fewer appearances than I have fingers on this here hand. They're less of a superhero group and more of a support group for other prominent superheroes who are queer. And honestly, I kinda love that. Although I'm sure they do still team up and fight crime. But they're also mainly about advocating for LGBTQIA+ rights. This team made their first appearance in the 2020 2021 issue of DC Pride. They also popped up in 2023 DC Pride and in a holiday special as well. The team or group is led by Extraño, a powerful magic-based superhero who was the first out and proud Soup. He created the group to make sure others out there never felt alone as he had initially, and I love it. Number 1, 6. You might have heard of the Krakoan 5, but do you know of the Six? The Six, or just Six, are a team of primarily teleportation-based mutant heroes who were recruited by Abigail Brand to be part of her new mutant-based sword team, when that was a thing. Well, the team is called the Six. There are actually more than 6 members. The Six refers to the core members who are the teleportation-based mutants, while the other members are also integral to the mission statement of the team, which is all about further expansion and exploration of the possibilities of mutant technology. The team has included Abigail Brand, Magneto, Manifold, Armor, Cora of the Burning Heart, WizKid, Peeper, Fabian Cortez, Risque, Gateway, Lila Cheney, Blink, Amelia Vaught, and Vanisher. The team also has backup members on call in case they need to swap folks out as well, especially for teleporters. Which, to be fair, there are a lot of mutant teleporters, so that makes sense.
Number 10, the UFOs. The UFOs are a group of Hulk villains who wanted to recreate the accident that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. They hired the engineers who built the Fantastic Four's original ship and set off, hoping to be pelted by cosmic rays. Their ground facility was discovered by Bruce Banner, who thought the team were being exposed to the rays by accident and brought the shuttle down. The team resented the fact that Banner tried to save them, as they thought that longer exposure would have made them even more powerful. This resentment caused them to vow revenge on Banner and the Hulk. The UFOs have 4 members: Ironclad, X-Ray, Vapor, and Vector. Ironclad was transformed by the cosmic rays into organic metal that he can control, making him able to increase or decrease his weight at will. This allows him to hover in the air or come down on his enemies with the force of a mountain. He also has superhuman strength and durability. X-Ray was transformed into living energy and therefore can't really be hurt. He can fly, turn invisible, and emit radiation blasts, as well as negative gamma rays, which allow him to transform Hulk back into his human form. I suppose he could also use this power to give most of the Avengers cancer. Vapor can transform into any gas she wants, usually using it to poison her enemies. Vector has telekinetic powers which he can use to move objects as well as focus into blasts, which have shown to be able to flay most of the Hulk's skin. Sure, the Hulk has managed to take them out on his own, but if they can get him off the board with X-Ray's powers, the other Avengers will have a challenge taking out this supergroup gone bad.
In at number 9 is the Sinister Six. Spider-Man is one of the best heroes Marvel has to offer. Maybe not the most powerful, but arguably the most popular and inspiring. But gosh darn it if he doesn't have a knack for absolutely ticking off his villains with incredibly good, and some might say annoying, quips. He drives villains insane, which is likely why his 6 greatest villains came together to try and bring him down for good. The original team was made up of Dr. Octopus, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Sandman, and the Vulture, and each one of these villains can arguably give the Avengers a hell of a time on their own, but together they are a force to be reckoned with. There have been multiple different versions of this team, with other villains swapping out, and sometimes they've even had more than just 6 villains on the team. Dr. Octopus, Electro, and the Vulture are usually there, but some other strong villains who have shown up on this team include Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, Lizard, Rhino, Scorpion, Shocker, Venom, and Swarm. Now, I'm keeping them all the way up here because honestly, they get beaten way too often by Spider-Man alone, and they have a huge weakness in the form of being incredibly bad at cooperating with one another. Although, when the Sinister 12 came for Spider-Man, he needed the help of Black Cat, Captain America, Iron Man, Daredevil, Yellow Jacket, and the Fantastic Four for them to hold their own, which is a hell of a feat for the villains. I'll give them that.
Number 8, Alpha Strike. Due to my compulsive need to slowly turn this into an Alpha Flight channel, I present to you Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike is a team led by the Master of Evil, who with a group of villains and a few mind-controlled heroes managed to take over Canada and nearly destroy Alpha Flight in the process. Members of this team include a brainwashed Vindicator who has a battle suit that allows her to lift heavy objects, fly, teleport herself westward at the speed of the Earth's rotation, and fire energy beams that can incinerate a person with ease. Other members include Purple Woman, who like her father the Purple Man can compel people to to do whatever she tells them, Citadel, who has a healing factor and adamantium armor grafted onto his body, as well as super strength so powerful he was able to send Colossus flying, the Wendigo, who routinely gives the Hulk a run for his money, and Ranark, who is a powerful user of dark magic, who was once a shaman who tried to claim enough power to become a god. And to anyone who doesn't think the Master would be a threat to the Avengers, I remind you that he already was, as it was he, disguised as Canada's ambassador to the Alpha Flight space program, who manipulated the Inhuman Profiler's evidence in order to isolate Captain Marvel and help cause the second Marvel Civil War. Number 7. The Liberators. Hailing from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the Liberators are a group of supervillains who, with under-the-table support from the governments of Russia, France, China, North Korea, Iran, and Syria, invaded the United States. In an effort to counter the United States super team, the Ultimates, the team consisted of each country's version of a super soldier, as well as thousands of mercenaries who each had battle suits that granted them super strength and flight, but shortened their lifespans to only 1 month. Due to extensive planning before the invasion to counter the Ultimates, the Liberators were able to successfully invade in just a few days, taking out the Fantastic Four, the Ultimates Reserves, as well as Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Man. The Colonel is an Iranian version of Captain America, having a similar power set. This universe's version of the Abomination is from China, but is otherwise very similar to his 616 counterpart. Crimson Dynamo is a Chinese Iron Man who has a battle suit as well as 50 giant-sized duplicates that he can control. Perrin is the Russian equivalent of Thor, sporting a hammer and a sickle. Hurricane is a North Korean speedster. The ultimate version of Swarm is a mutant woman from Syria who can control millions of bugs at a time. Schizoid Man is the Frenchman who can duplicate himself in a manner similar to Multiple Man. And rounding out the team is the God of Mischief himself, Loki, who doesn't have a personal stake in the fight, but thought it could be fun to help start World War III. Between all these superpowered foes and their augmented army, the Avengers of Earth 616 would have a hard time overcoming these Liberators.
Coming in at number 6 is Intelligentsia. While some teams have power in raw strength or battle prowess, Intelligentsia has brain power, which basically means they get away with things much more often and for much longer. The team is made up of some of the smartest villainous minds. The leader, MODOK, Mr. Sinister, Wizard, Dr. Doom, Egghead, Claw, Mad Thinker, and more have all at some point been a part of this group. Initially, they formed to exchange information between themselves, but then began collecting parts of the Library of Alexandria scattered in some of the most legendary places, because that's just how it works, and they even caused the arrival of the Beyonder. But in my humble opinion, the team became much cooler during World War Hulk. When Hulk came back to Earth, waging war on the planet, Leader brought the team together, and using their knowledge to hack into defense satellites and harness cosmic energy, they brought the hulking behemoth all the way down to the ground. Using this tech, they managed to figure out how to use cosmic energy and gamma radiation to create incredibly powerful beings like the Red Hulk, Red She-Hulk, A-Bomb, and Amadeus Cho. Although, this led to their defeat because they're still villains. But in World War Hulk, they managed to succeed where the heroes had failed, and that's saying something. Now we have the new Intelligentsia, and I'm excited to see them do something truly villainous and very cool.
Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. A frequent foe of the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is a group formed by Magneto with the goal of either eradicating or subjugating humanity so that mutant kind can take their place as the dominant species on Earth. While membership has fluctuated over the years, it has played host to villains such as Magneto, who has been able to take on the Avengers by himself in the past, as well as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who of course later joined the Avengers. Some of the other members they have had over the years include Mystique, Toad, the Juggernaut, the Blob, Pyro, Mastermind, and Sabretooth, just to name a few. With these powerful team members and their Omega-level leader, it would take an impressive roster of Avengers to triumph over this Brotherhood. I mean, what's Iron Man going to do against the Master of Magnetism other than die horribly? The Brotherhood consistently gives the X-Men a run for their money, and frankly, the X-Men are usually way more powerful than the Avengers, so Earth's mightiest heroes would have one hell of a fight on their hands. In order to even stand a chance, they would have to be fighting with a roster that includes Captain Marvel and the Hulk.
Coming to number 4 is the Dark Avengers. Okay, so after the events of Civil War, Iron Man became head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was pretty quickly followed by the Secret Invasion event where the entire world was basically infiltrated by the Skrulls under Tony Stark's watch. That led to people of the world to not trust him as S.H.I.E.L.D's leader, and so Norman Osborn of all people was chosen as the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and somehow a lot of people thought that was a good idea. Norman did a mass rebranding, turning S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hammer, which doesn't actually stand for anything, it just sounds cool. His Thunderbolts became a Black Ops team, and a bunch of Avengers quit, which prompted him to take on new members. Bullseye, Moonstone, and Venom, who are all loyal members of the Thunderbolts, came in dressing up as Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, and Spider-Man respectively. Two extremely strong Avengers, Ares God of War and Robert Reynolds the Sentry, both remained on the team. Then there was also Daken, the son of Wolverine, adopting a costume like his dad's, and Novar, a Kree who took on the Captain Marvel title. Lastly, Osborn himself suited up in a suit of Iron Man armor, but with the Captain America red, white, and blue, plus a star, dubbing himself the Iron Patriot. A team that includes Sentry is almost always a powerhouse, but then you add these other team members and manipulate Sentry to unleashing the Void. The heroes had their hands full just trying to deal with these Dark Avengers and Norman Osborn's hammer. And in at number 3 is the Horseman of Apocalypse. Every time the ancient, incredibly powerful mutant Apocalypse shows up to cause a headache for the heroes, he is almost always accompanied by his horsemen. Extremely powerful mutants, and sometimes non-mutants, chosen by Apocalypse to receive biological, genetic, and celestial enhancements that push their power to a substantially higher level. They can have their powers augmented or receive completely new powers altogether, whatever would help Apocalypse and whatever his current goal is. Some of the most powerful beings have been one of the Horsemen at some point. I'm talking characters like the Sentry, Hulk, Wolverine, Sunfire, Polaris, Psylocke, and Gambit. But even characters that hadn't existed before showed up as his Horsemen, and they were intense. Apocalypse's final Horseman team, for example, were all largely unheard of characters, but there was Decimus Furious, who was a giant Minotaur-looking guy from way back in the Roman Empire, Jeb Lee, who can give people cancer and cause their flesh to be eaten away by playing on the drums, which is just odd. Sanjar Javid could transmit a whole spectrum of different deadly diseases via metal, and then there was Ishizumi, who could detach her jaw and send an absolutely massive and terrifying swarm of Yume beetles that could devour or dismember her target and steal their memories. Like what? And I haven't even spoken about the first Horseman, and I'm not going to.
Number 2, the Black Order. The goal of the Mad Titan Thanos is to wage war on life itself in an effort to impress the woman he loves, who also happens to be deaf. In order to help him with this goal, he has assembled a team of aliens to serve as his generals, the Black Order. Members include Corvus Glaive, who is not only a tactical genius, but immortal as long as his blade remains intact. Hela, the goddess of death, the Primordial Elder, the Challenger, who can access residual energy from the Big Bang, the telekinetic sorcerer Ebony Maw with persuasive powers, Black Swan, who can shoot optic blasts and has so much strength that she escaped from a prison designed to hold a Herald of Galactus, Black Dwarf, who is pretty much just big and strong, and Proxima Midnight, who is an expert combatant with super strength, endurance, and near invulnerability. They were memorably featured in the Infinity War movie and caused just as much, if not more, trouble for the heroes in the comics as they do in the film.
And in at number 1 is the Cabal in Secret Wars. You know, if you create a group for the sole purpose of destroying planets, you know they have got to be pretty powerful. And the Cabal, created by Namor the Submariner, are absolutely powerful. So, during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, these things called incursions started to happen, orchestrated by the Beyonders. Essentially, two multiverses would crash together, destroying them both, and the focal point for that crash was the Earth itself. When the incursions started to threaten the multiverse, Namor had a different view from the rest of the Illuminati, and during the incursion with Earth 4290001, Namor destroyed that Earth to save both universes and save his Earth. Now when the next incursion presented itself right after that, the Illuminati were going to just let it happen instead of destroying an entire alternate Earth. Standing against that, Namor teamed up with Maximus the Mad of the Inhumans, and then together they freed the prisoners of the Illuminati, which included Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive, Terrax, the Herald of Galactus from Earth 13054, Black Swan, and the Mad Titan Thanos himself. Basically, this is like the Black Order from the last point, plus some insanely powerful additions. And they are very, very powerful. This group of villainous powerhouses were sanctioned by the United Nations to destroy the alternate Earths that appeared during incursions. While Namor had planned to use explosions to destroy the other Earths, Thanos, who pretty much took control of the group, led them in what was basically a complete and utter slaughter. After Namor tried to betray the group during another incursion, they instead became trapped on the other Earth and escaped to the ultimate 1610 universe, where they welcomed an evil alternate version of Reed Richards, known as the Maker, onto that team, making them even more powerful. When they survived the end of the multiverse and end up on Battleworld, this group was strong enough to face an army of Thors, but they didn't really stand a chance against God Emperor Doom.